Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. Today we have a special guest at the Timmy the Toolman studios, and his name is Garrett. And the way I met Garrett is he contacted me a while back on toyotaforerunner.org, and he was inquiring if I was interested in doing a two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive swap. We never got together for that project, but he did get it done. And then as time went on, he actually got his motor swapped at Yota One Performance. And as you know, we've been working with Yota One Performance quite a bit lately. And in keeping with that tradition, we are going to shoot another video for something that Yota One makes. It's a compressor bracket that's made really well to be able to fit an ARB compressor just like this one in your engine compartment on the passenger side. This bracket is going to work for all the third generation 4Runner years. Yota One is also working on a bracket that's going to work for first generation Toyota Tacomas. It's going to be coming out soon. For those of you that have a first gen Tacoma, you're also going to be able to get one of these nice brackets to mount your ARB air compressor in your engine compartment. Basically what this bracket allows you to do is you're going to be mounting the air compressor, you're going to be mounting the igniter, and you're going to be mounting your cruise control module all onto this bracket. And we're going to show you how to do that. It utilizes some hardware that the Yota One bracket comes with, and it's going to utilize some of the hardware from the ARB compressor, and finally it's going to utilize some of the hardware that's in your engine compartment when you take off these different components. With all that said, let's get started with this job. The third generation year we're working on is a 1999. Basically 96 to 2000, the engine compartment's going to look the same, but on the 01 and 02s it's going to look a little different because they have a different throttle body and they have a different master cylinder, so there's a little bit of a difference. We're going to be working on this passenger side. This is the cruise control module. Underneath the cruise control module is the igniter, and basically this is the area where the custom Yota One air compressor bracket is going to go. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the cruise control cable from the throttle body bracket. Garrett's going to do that with two open-end 14mm wrenches. He's got the cable free of the bracket. Now he's going to twist the throttle and be able to get the little lead end for the cable out. So now the cruise control cable is completely free. The next thing we're going to do is disconnect the electrical connector for the cruise control module.
So if you look over here, there's actually a rail that this thing slides on. So what you want to do to disconnect this is press down on your tab, and you're going to flex this thing forward once it unlocks. And you have to fully rock and slide that, and what it does is it pushes your whole cruise control harness off.
This white thing is like a camming device, right? And it pushes it off for you. Okay. The next thing we're going to tackle is we're going to disconnect the fasteners that hold the cruise control bracket to the body. The first two we're going to go for are these 10mm bolts right here. Garrett's utilizing my M12 long reach cordless ratchet to zip out a couple of those bolts. The last fastener that holds this cruise control bracket to the body is right down here on the top of the fender. It's also a 10mm bolt. And now we have the whole cruise control module and bracket free of the engine compartment. The next thing we're going to remove is the igniter. It's also held on by 10mm bolts, one here and one over here closer to the air box.
And then once you remove this, all you have to do is basically press down on the tab of the harness, wiggle it out, and it's free.
We now have the two components off the rig that we need to transfer to the Yota One bracket: the igniter and the cruise control module. The first thing that we're going to transfer over to the bracket is the igniter. And Garrett has to disconnect the igniter from the existing Toyota bracket utilizing either a JIS screwdriver or a Phillips screwdriver. We're going to use a JIS. We're going to put this igniter on in this orientation with the electrical connector facing this way, because this is going to be sitting in the engine compartment just like this. This is going to be the passenger side fender, and then this direction is facing towards the engine. So utilizing the same screws that held on the igniter to the Toyota bracket, he's going to screw it onto the Yota 1 bracket. Next thing we have to do is we have to disconnect the cruise control module from the cruise control bracket. The bolts that hold the cruise control module to the bracket are 8mm, and we're going to utilize that M12 ratchet to zip them off. From this cruise control bracket, we need to salvage these 4 rubber grommets and these 4 metal sleeves. All you have to do is you pull the metal sleeve out just like that, and then you just use your finger and you can push this grommet through. And if you look on the other side, these rubber grommets are part of this rubber pad on the back side. To get it out completely, you have to do the same thing. First pull out the metal sleeve and then push the grommet through. And there it is. The rubber pad with the grommets affixed to it is out.
And so now we're just going to install it on the Yota 1 bracket. It only fits in one orientation. Nick was nice enough, he just has slots here, so we should be able to slide these first ones in pretty easy. Keep missing it.
Keep missing it. Sounds like a personal problem, Garrett.
Alright. Just constantly flexing and molding the rubber till you get it through. And there we go.
As I was taking out this pad from the Toyota cruise control bracket, this rubber is pretty flexible, so it's not that big of a fight. You should be able to do this pretty easily. Now we got to get the metal sleeves pushed in underneath. So now we have the cruise control rubber grommet and metal sleeves attached to the Yota 1 bracket. Now we're going to attach the cruise control module to the top of this rubber pad utilizing the factory hardware that attached it to the Toyota bracket. You really can't mess this up because it could only go on one way. You'll see that this appendage, this half moon, has to drop into this cutout in the Yota 1 bracket. And then you have to get your factory bolts coming in from the bottom side. We're going to start with the back ones because it's a little tight to get in there. One trick that Garrett is utilizing is he's turning the whole assembly in this orientation where he can see the bolt going into the hole on the module. It's just helping him align it easier, as opposed to doing it from this orientation where you can't actually see if the bolt is lining up with the hole in the cruise control module. The way Garrett was doing the starting of the bolts was just like a couple fingers. If you have fat fingers, maybe get your girlfriend to help you out. But yeah, it's just a little bit tight to get your fingers in there to get the bolt started, but you can. And then now we're going to get onto these with a 8mm ratcheting wrench to cinch them up. We're purposely keeping this one out. We're going to get the 2 back ones cinched up first because we pretty much think that if this bolt is in there, it's going to get in the way of us swinging the wrench. So once the 2 back ones are snugged up, then we're going to work on getting this one in. We're going to use this ratcheting 8mm box end wrench. It's a flex head also. I highly recommend getting some ratcheting box end wrenches. It makes something like this a lot easier so you don't have to keep on resetting the wrench. These are from Tekton. Tekton makes some pretty good affordable tools. I'll put a link to this Tekton long box end wrench kit in the video description. Okay, those two back bolts are cinched up. Now we're going to get this one started and tightened, and then this one, get it as tight as we can with our fingers, and then go to an open end 8mm. He's just getting that last one as tight as he can with his finger, and then we're going to get an open end 8mm on there. Okay, and all these 4 bolts are to that German spec we all know and love, good and tight. Now we're going to work on getting the ARB compressor connected up to the Yota 1 bracket. What Yota 1 instructs you to do is you disconnect the ARB bracket from the ARB air compressor by disconnecting these Allen head bolts on both sides of the air compressor. And then we're going to take this bracket and transfer it over right here onto the Yota 1 air compressor bracket. These are a 4mm Allen head bolt, and Garrett's going to zip them out with the Milwaukee ratchet utilizing a 4mm Allen socket. All right, and this bracket should be able to just slide right off, just like that. And now we're going to transfer this bracket over to the Yota 1 compressor bracket. For this part of the project, you'll want to utilize the ARB hardware that comes with your ARB air compressor. But what you're going to see us using is some different hardware because the nylon lock nuts that come with the kit, they wore out because Garrett had a homemade bracket that he was using to mount the compressor in his engine compartment, and after taking the fasteners on and off multiple times, the nylon lock nuts kind of wore out. So we're going to utilize some different hardware, but we suggest you use the ARB hardware that comes with the ARB air compressor. The orientation for this bracket is with the mounting holes in this orientation, and it's going to fit onto the Yota 1 bracket just like this, and the air compressor is going to be sitting lengthwise right in this area. So first what we're going to do is we're going to lock the compressor bracket onto the Yota 1 bracket utilizing some washers and some nuts. We don't have these nuts tight yet because what we want to do is bring this assembly over into the engine compartment with the air compressor. We're going to do a test fit and confirm that we got the bracket in the orientation we need so the compressor is going to fit well in the engine compartment. So now we're going to go over to the engine and test fit it. We've got the Yota 1 bracket in the engine compartment. He dropped the compressor in, and he's confirmed that the compressor is not going to be rubbing up against anything. So we can now take this back to our workbench and lock down that bracket. When you're using the ARB hardware, the nuts are a 10mm. With these other nuts that Garrett got for the project, these actually happen to be 11mm. So we're going to utilize a 1/4 inch ratchet and an 11mm socket to lock these down. We've got the ARB compressor bracket tight to the Yota 1 bracket, and now we are going to affix the ARB compressor to the ARB bracket. The air compressor needs to be in this orientation with the air filter facing this way, facing the same way that the igniter connection is facing. If you flipped it the other direction, then this filter would be slamming into the fender well and it's not going to work. So it has to be mounted in this orientation. We're going to get all 4 Allen head bolts started before we cinch them up. Now that we have all 4 Allen head bolts started, we're going to cinch them up with the 1/4 inch ratchet. We now have all 3 components on the Yota 1 bracket. The ARB compressor, the igniter, and the cruise control module. Now we're going to take this whole assembly and we're going to get it affixed in the engine compartment.
So we're gonna drop this bracket in and use factory holes in the fender. What we're gonna do in a minute is take this bolt out, and when we put it in, the support bracket arm is gonna sit here, and reuse this bolt and reuse your igniter bolt there. And then there will be a threaded bolt that goes through this part where the igniter bracket was sitting originally. And then what we're gonna do is remove this clip, and we're gonna slide a bolt through that and then put a nut on through the bottom side of the fender to secure the bracket.
That first bolt that Garrett talked about, that's actually one of the bolts that fasten the air box to the body. So we're gonna take out this 12mm bolt for the air box. The last thing we need to do in preparation to get the assembly into the engine compartment is we have to disconnect this airbag clip for this wiring harness, and it pokes through the fender, so you can go into the fender well above the tire and disconnect it. And that's what we're going to do right now. It's this clip right here, right above your shock tower and upper control arm. He did it with his fingers. If you find the clip is a little tight, you can do it with some bent nose needle nose pliers or straight nose needle nose pliers or any type of pliers, and push it through. Now you can see that this clip is free of the body. This part of the Yota 1 bracket, this little side plate, we don't have it tight yet because with it still loose, it's going to allow us to align the bolt holes easier. So we recommend you keep this loose for now until you get these two bolt holes lined up. So Garrett's going to drop this into the engine compartment now. Garrett has it dropped in, and one thing to note is that this side bracket, it sits under this part of the air box, so you have to slide that bracket underneath and then get that metal sleeve and bolt in place and then get the bolt started. We're going to get this other bolt started, and because you can see how tight it is in there, you can't really get your hand in very well to get the bolt started. So we're going to use that trick I've used many times. We're going to put some black tape over the end of the socket, force the bolt into the socket so it holds in place, and then using an extension, we're going to drop it in and get it started. So a little bit of black tape over the socket, and then he's going to force the head of the bolt into the socket. And then now you can see that the bolt won't fall out. That bolt we just dropped in using that trick with the tape over the socket, that is the Toyota factory hardware that was used to affix the igniter to the body. We're going to use that same trick with the tape over the socket to get this bolt dropped in, because again, you can see there's very little room to get your hand in there. So for this next fastener, the bolt is provided with the Yota 1 bracket, but it's going to utilize the factory hole that was for the igniter. Okay, Garrett got that one started. The last fastener we have to connect is in the fender well. The bracket has a stud that slides through that hole for the airbag clip. So you can see the stud sticking through the fender right here, and Garrett's going to spin on the flange nut that the Yota 1 bracket comes with. All right, since we're here, we're going to start off and cinch this one down all the way. We have all the fasteners required for the bracket connected now. This is a 10mm flange nut. Okay, he's got that cinched up snug with the 1/4" ratchet and 10mm socket. Now we're going to tighten up the ones up above. He's going to tighten up this 10mm bolt right here next to the cruise control module. He's going to tighten up this 12mm bolt for the air box that the Yota 1 bracket shares. The final one we're going to tighten up is the 10mm bolt in front of that 12mm bolt. Now that we have all the fasteners that affix the bracket to the body, we're going to lock down these two small fasteners for this side bracket. These Allen head bolts are a 4mm. On this one, he can get on there with a socket. This one's a little too tight, so he's just going to have to get on there with a regular, conventional Allen wrench. Okay, both of those 4mm bolts are tight. The first connection we are going to make is for the igniter down below underneath the air tube. Just push it in until you feel it click and pull back a little bit. Make sure that it's not going to pull out. Okay. Now we're going to connect up the cruise control electrical connection. You push it in, you push the white cam back this way, it locks in place, and you're good to go. Now we're going to reconnect the cruise control cable. We're first going to get the lead end into the throttle body. Once you get your cable connected, you want to make sure that there's a little bit of slack in this cable. When I feel this feels pretty darn tight, so you don't want it like that. That's going to make your cruise control not work properly. So we're going to have to make some adjustment to the 14mm nuts. You just want to make sure there's a little bit of play in this cable. You don't want it taut. And then just using your two 14mm open end wrenches, cinch it down to the bracket. Yep, that feels pretty good. The install is now complete. We're not going to show you how to run the air lines and to do all the electrical, because that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video was to showcase the cool Yota 1 air compressor bracket that you can get to have a nice clean install in your engine compartment. So you're going to have to do your own research and use the instructions from the ARB compressor and maybe some write-ups to learn how to properly run the air lines and to properly do the electrical portion for the ARB compressor install. All right, we're all done with this job. As you saw, it's pretty straightforward. You need to disconnect your igniter, you disconnect the cruise control module, you get everything connected to the bracket on your workbench or wherever you're working on it. Once everything's connected to the bracket, then you just go back into the engine compartment, you affix it like we showed, and you're good to go. You now have a nice clean location for your ARB air compressor in your engine compartment on your 3rd generation Toyota 4Runner. And like I said at the beginning, Yota 1 is going to have a bracket for a 1st generation Toyota Tacoma coming out very soon. We'll put a link in the video description to Yota 1 so you too can get your cool ARB air compressor bracket for your Toyota 4Runner or Toyota Tacoma. I'd like to thank Garrett for being willing to drive down to the Timmy the Toolman studios from where he lives in Oakland to make this video happen. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, do that below. Take care. Bye-bye. Sick mods and sick Yota 1 ARB air compressor brackets. Peace out and bye-bye.